Good morning. My name is Tom Karcz, and I would like to extend my appreciation to Mrs. Sampson and the chapel team for this opportunity to speak with you today during Faculty Chapel Week. Similar to the Bailey girls last week, I'm going to be speaking on this month's theme of awareness. I really enjoyed how Raina, Victoria, Ms. Chow, and others touched on various aspects of this theme last week. My goal today is to add to the conversation that the Bailey girls sparked last week about the concept of awareness. This brings me to the plaque that is propped in front of the lectern. You may have noticed one just like it in most classrooms. It has on it the school's framework for promoting what can be called social emotional learning, or SEL for short. This is a shorthand for the development of capacities in each of us which are associated with what researchers call human flourishing or human thriving. In other words, the living of a happy, healthy, meaningful, and fulfilling life. This framework, developed by a team under the leadership of Mrs. Blake, notes 5 key capacity areas: awareness, curiosity, engagement, strength, and innovativeness, and connects them with Appleby's 4 core values: respect, responsibility, integrity, and compassion. The school's underlying belief about the SEL framework is that if we can help each of you develop the 5 capacities and the 4 values during your time with us, we will have played a positive role in helping you along your life pathway to becoming your best self, where you can flourish and thrive by exercising these essential human capacities and values. In Appleby's SEL framework, the capacity of awareness is associated with several others. The 2 that I would like to speak with you about this morning are resilience and self-awareness. I'll speak a little bit about the emergent research on human happiness and well-being, and also the role they can play in assisting us to have a satisfying, fulfilling life. I will also weave in some elements of my life story. Near the end, I will try to explain how what I've talked about connects to how and what we learn at Appleby, and to new directions the school will be taking in the years ahead. In closing, I will put out some challenges to you. I was the second youngest of 5 kids. I have 3 brothers and 1 sister. I grew up way back in the 60s and 70s. We were a middle-class family in Burlington, Ontario, right next to Oakville. Not untypically for the time, my mom worked incredibly hard on the home front, while my dad worked incredibly hard in the paid economy, playing professional football while holding down a second job and being committed to the football team on weekends. My brothers and sister and I were raised with family dinners, hockey night in Canada once a week on Saturday nights, Sunday church, TV programs like Mary Tyler Moore, MASH, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and of course, Bonanza. On Bonanza, the main characters lived at the Ponderosa Ranch, which reminds me of a restaurant chain named Ponderosa that my friends and I would go to. We also enjoyed a restaurant chain named Mother's Pizza. Musically, I listened to a lot of the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and Bruce Springsteen, but I always had a soft spot for folkies like Bob Dylan. As a boy, I loved the Montreal Canadiens and would cry when they lost a big game, but for some reason that I still don't understand, later on I switched my allegiance to become a long-suffering Toronto Maple Leafs fan. There was an ethic at the time that said kids should be outside playing and tiring themselves out. So that's what my friends and I did. Outside, we regularly played pickup road hockey, football, and basketball, went on long hikes, had neighborhood-wide games of hide and seek in the evenings. There were different kinds of consequences to this. On the one hand, there was a rough and tumble atmosphere to our activities where more moral rules were suspect, with older and bigger kids imposing their wills, often in unfair, unkind, and arbitrary ways. And there was not a lot of attention paid to risk, and there were definitely times when we avoided major injury by pure luck. On the other hand, this lack of structure meant we had to find means of cooperation as well as develop grit or resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back after adversity or setbacks, to get back up after being knocked down. I definitely developed this trait. I developed it also in part due to particular setbacks. For example, in grades 9 and 10, I was a key player on my school basketball and volleyball teams, but because we were a brand new high school with a small population and an unestablished athletics culture, In those early years, we struggled to put together good teams and winning seasons. So we experienced a lot of blowouts and losses. But we had great camaraderie, humor, and culture on those teams. When I talk with my old friends now, we all agree that those challenging seasons helped us learn that we wouldn't always win in life and acquire a lifelong ability to shake off setbacks, keep things in perspective, and regroup for the next time. Where it got a bit more intense for me personally was in my last couple of years of high school, when my friends kept growing, getting stronger, and becoming more coordinated, with the result that I was not good enough to be a starter anymore. I had peaked as an athlete in grade 9 and grade 10. Now to connect this part of my life with self-awareness. Self-awareness is the idea of knowing yourself, including elements such as your strengths and limitations, how you think, the role your emotions and intellect play in shaping your behavior, what your needs are versus your wants, the impact that you have on others, and the impact that others have on you, etc. Some strengths I think I had during high school included the one I just talked about, resilience, as well as kindness, love of learning, and social intelligence. Social intelligence is the ability to be aware of the feelings and needs of others. I think these strengths really helped me to enjoy the good times of adolescence and navigate through the more challenging parts. At the same time, perhaps like many of you, I think I tended to overestimate my limitations and underestimate my strengths, with the result that at certain times I had a dominant, inaccurate self-image of I'm not enough or I'm not good enough. I think I even took the theme of not being good enough anymore in basketball and volleyball and applied it across my personality, telling myself I wasn't good at most things. In addition, there were weaknesses I had, such as worrying too much about how I would be perceived by my peers, and strengths that I was largely unaware I had or hadn't cultivated yet, such as the ability to understand my emotions and how they were influencing my thoughts and behaviors. The overall effect was that my self-talk, or the track of inner dialogue in my head, was often, I can't do this, I'm no good at that, I'll be embarrassed if I fail at that. All of this resulted in a lack of confidence, less willingness to be my authentic self in front of others, and less willingness to take risks. Of course, at the time, I would present a brave front to the external world, my friends, my family, my teachers. When I was elected by my peers to do the valedictory address at my high school graduation, no one besides me probably knew how much I wasn't at peace on the inside despite external appearances. Now, what might be inferable from these personal experiences with resilience and self-awareness, and more importantly, incredibly, what is the new science of well-being saying on these matters? First, in relation to resilience. There's no doubt that setbacks can help us grow. But I don't think that any of us would say that because some of us can grow from some types of adversity and setbacks, we should therefore purposely create extreme negative adverse situations with the thought that, oh, these situations are necessary because they will help us to grow and learn. I think we can agree that we should be trying to prevent inappropriate adversity caused by such things as discrimination and systemic inhumane treatment of others. Just think of all the devastating trauma and negative effects of the Indian residential school systems in Canada. It also seems true that some adversity will always be part of life due to human behavior and systems, as well as due to chance and randomness in the world. So, we appear to be left with the following position. We should promote some kinds of adversity and setbacks while trying to limit and mitigate others. What's really cool is that both the emerging science of well-being and educational research support the notion that amazing growth and learning can take place when we are in learning environments where we face the following kind of adversity. Problems that are challenging, which we face cooperatively, that force us to stretch ourselves intellectually and emotionally, that allow us to fail in a process where there is support and feedback, so that we can continue towards an eventual solution. Points of research on these kinds of experiences are very interesting. Here are some of them. If the challenge is not too low and not too high, demands effort, allows for trial and error for mistakes and failures in a context where these are treated as sources of illumination, where there is a recognition that there may be multiple possible solutions and no one perfect answer, all in an environment where the motivation is to solve the issue or problem rather than generate external rewards, the following outcomes have been noted. There is a good success rate for actually solving the problem or issue. The participants in this kind of learning report high levels of joy and comment that they get into flow, or a process where they lose themselves and sense of time in the activity. Permission for mistakes and seeing these as opportunities promotes a feeling of hope and optimism during the experience. And finally, setbacks are looked at not as catastrophic game enders, but as signals and prompts to try something else towards a best fit solution rather than some theoretical, preordained, perfect solution. Some additional points of research on resilience include participating in these kinds of activities can help us build up or develop the capacity of resilience. In this sense, resilience is like a muscle that can be enhanced through practice. Resilience can be transferable, which means we may be able to draw on it when we face truly difficult and even traumatic and catastrophic adversity. Resilience is associated with skills such as growth mindset, courage, and hard work. And because of this has a stronger positive correlation with long-term academic success, financial success, and self-reported well-being than IQ does. Now moving from resilience to self-awareness. What might be inferable from my personal experiences with self-awareness, and what does the new science of well-being have to say about this? When I look back on the possible causes of how my personality developed when I was growing up, which of course I'm still trying to do, with both its strengths and limitations, I for sure note the role of nature, i.e. genetics and traits passed down from my parents, but also the broad environment I grew up in. Within that broader environment, I think of the love and support of my parents and family, especially my wife Eileen and twin daughters Meredith and Rachel, and my friends, which have helped me to develop strengths such as my own capacity to love and be loved, and also to be hopeful and to engage in life in a vigorous way. When I look back on earlier years, I think of team sports as especially formative for me. And in my adult life, I think of activities such as camping and cycling as strong nurturing sources of the capacities for humility and appreciation of beauty. Privilege, my privilege. This is a huge point that I have begun more and more to contemplate in the past few years. In particular, I've been thinking of the status and the benefits that have flowed to me largely simply because of the luck of my birth circumstances, rather than due to my own merit or efforts. I am a Christian, white, middle-class, baby boomer male, born into a supportive family in one of the wealthiest, safest, and freest countries in the world. My own growing self-awareness about my privilege feeds a strong desire I have to work towards making the world a more just and fair place. Another big learning takeaway is that although I was unaware of some of my strengths and how to access them, and had not developed several of them, and had overestimated my limitations, these tendencies are not inevitably a part of adolescence. In this regard, here's what's cool in the emerging science of well-being and educational research about human strengths and about the strength of self-awareness. All human beings have 24 character strengths or capacities. These 24 exist in each one of us to different extents and in different ways. Taken as a whole, they create an individual strengths profile for each of us. In addition to some of the ones I've mentioned, here are some more: gratitude, creativity, self-regulation, prudence, perspective, forgiveness, teamwork, to name a few. We are all likely to have signature strengths, which we use a lot and which energize us and generally serve us well. And it makes sense to learn about these strengths and nurture them. Strength spotting, or noticing the strengths of others, can serve to strengthen them. We can overuse strengths, which can turn them into weaknesses. For example, if I am always kind, I may not activate the capacity for bravery in a situation, say, when someone is doing something unethical or unacceptable and needs to be called out. We can develop underused strengths, which may be helpful in situations where particular strengths are more effective than others. With respect to the specific strength of self-awareness, some interesting research points include the following. Having self-awareness about how we think, or thinking and trying to understand how we think and learn, this is called metacognition, enables us to learn in new ways. In fact, science shows that new perspectives on our learning can literally open up new neural pathways in our brains, which allow us to access new knowledge and create new meaning. As well, by being self-aware, we can provide ourselves with potential tools for dealing with unnecessary anxiety and stress. For example, we are all born with a negativity bias, which means we naturally scan our environment for threats. When we do so and come across a perceived threat, we induce stress in our body so that we will undertake a fight or flight response. The thing is, in contemporary society, we now seem to regularly perceive non-catastrophic threats, such as failing a test, not getting into my first choice university program, or missing out on a social experience, as this kind of threat. And therefore, we create the kind of stress in ourselves that is biologically intended to match a very serious physical or catastrophic threat. The result is a lot of us are experiencing too much debilitating stress that is unnecessary. What's great is research suggests that once we are aware of our negativity bias and how much we might be mismatching our stress response to various situations, we can look for tools and exercise these tools to help ourselves better manage anxiety and stress. A great tool in this context that I'm learning more about is mindfulness. Another tool that can be derived from being self-aware is more effective self-talk. If we become aware of the relationships between our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, we can be more realistic in our assessment of ourselves. If I had been aware of this back in the day, I may not have generalized my thoughts that I wasn't good anymore in volleyball and basketball across other domains of my life, since upon reasonable reflection, there was no objective evidence for this. Thus, the inner dialogue I used to coach myself probably would have been more accurate and effective. Here are some other experiences which are thought to enable growth in self-awareness. Learning experiences which have opportunities for self-reflection, interactions with the natural world, serving others, experiences on teams where there is safety, vulnerability is shared, and the group has a common purpose. Experiences which require the person to fit into an overarching or transcendent set of meanings and narratives. For me, growing up as a Roman Catholic and trying to see how I fit into Jesus' moral order served that purpose well. Now, what does what I've been talking about have to do with what we are learning or how we learn here at Appleby and what we might be doing in the future? Well, first of all, I think it means that we are currently doing a few things right. Some of the core programs that you love and that we do well are structured and oriented to promote resilience and self-awareness. Think of the kinds of learning you do, your personal growth, and your takeaways in terms of feeling challenged, working collaboratively, being vulnerable, learning from setbacks, looking for larger meaning through the following: our outdoor ed program in Temagami, our service and intercultural learning and trips, our co-curricular program, our boarding program, our chapel program, much of the academic program, especially what we have recently been doing in the Design Tech Lab. All of these programs, to different extents, challenge and support us to grow our capacities of resilience and self-awareness. While all of this is true, what really excites me and many of your teachers going forward is the school's recent adoption of two big educational paradigms that will really help ensure the kind of learning and the kind of commitment to well-being that I have been talking about. These two educational mindsets are project-based learning and positive education. Commitment to project-based learning, or PBL, will allow for the kind of collaborative work, supportive of mistakes and real learning that I've been discussing. Commitment to positive education and what is called positive psychology will allow for deep personal learning about ourselves and our strengths that will support all of us to be on pathways towards flourishing and thriving. I think these two commitments will be really transformative for us as learners and for Applebee's culture, and I can't wait for them to be fully embraced. In closing, thank you for listening to me this morning. May I leave you with the following challenges. Learn how to promote resilience in yourself and in others. Grow your self-awareness, including about your strengths, as well as about how you think and learn. Support the strengths of others. Learn about how to live well and direct energy towards living that way. Now, would you all please stand and sing Hymn 1 in the red hymnal?